Right, hello. Quick PPR recap video on monopolies and oligopolies for year two market structures. So the first thing, normal kind of protocol. So I ask a question, pause the video, answer it, and then we'll go through it. So the first thing, monopolies. I would like an identification of all the different types of monopolies with their corresponding definitions, please. So pause the video, do that. Right, let's go. So monopoly, monopoly is a single seller in a market. Okay, so we've got different types. We have got, let's start off with pure monopoly. So a pure monopoly has 100% market share. That's whenever the firm is the industry, which is your sort of theoretical, I suppose, textbook definition of what a monopoly is. We've also got, working our way down, a dominant monopoly, which is a firm that has 40% or more of the market share. And then we've got what the CMA define as a monopoly or a working monopoly, and that is a firm, the CMA define as having 25% or more of the market share. Okay, so there are your sort of three market shares based on concentration of the market. You've also got what we call a natural monopoly. Okay, so a natural monopoly is a monopoly structure whereby it is unfeasible for competition. So that's the sense of the infrastructure the required to run a particular industry is so large. Okay, so the output that will be required to cover them costs and drive down unit costs and be efficient is so high that only one firm should do it. Because if more firms do it, the costs will be so high. So if you think about United Utilities, Thames Water, running the railway tracks, all these massive infrastructures, it makes sense for one firm to do it to be a natural monopoly. Because if more firms, multiple firms do it and duplicate all the infrastructure, the costs will be higher. They'll double literally. And then higher costs for all the firms could lead to even higher prices. So if one firm does it with higher output, it should help drive down costs. So two diagrams now then. Draw your diagram for a normal monopoly in year two and draw your diagram for a natural monopoly. So normal monopoly, I'm pretty sure we can all do this now. Price, cost, and revenue, quantity. Nike tick, AC halfway down and then foot cuts, AR and MR. I've done this a little bit to one side. You know what, I'm going to draw this again, sorry. So we've got price, cost, revenue, quantity, Nike tick, AC halfway down and then up again. Remember our Bermuda triangle, try and stay either side of that. Monopolies are going to produce here, they're going to Pmax, where MR equals MC. You always bring that point down to find the output where profits are maximised at. That's all that tells you. Please never go across from that point, that's absolutely nothing. You go up to the AR curve, which is the same as the demand curve, to find our price. And we also have to identify the cost per unit. You can write a C star there, you can leave it blank, but it's important that you shade in the difference between the two, because that is what we call supernormal profits. So that is your monopoly diagram. Them two lines, just looking back at it, should be a little bit more pivoted, the AR and the MR. So the AR should be inelastic because it's a monopoly. That MR should be a little bit steeper, but whatever. And then we've also got the natural monopoly diagram. So we've got same sort of axes, price, cost, quantity or output there. So we've got basically the way I remember how to draw this diagram is if you think about the MC and the AC, we're kind of like looking at the long run, but we're looking at the first part of the diagram. So the AC, if I draw two lines like this, okay, it's kind of implying that we don't see the bottom of what we're looking for, which is the average cost curve. Okay, So if you look at this diagram up here, you can see that the AC is initially higher, so in the long run it'll still be higher. So that's the LRAC, and below that we've got the LRMC. Okay, and basically what we're implying is, basically what we're implying is that the output that's required for these firms to drive down these average costs and produce a very low average cost is so high, it's way out here, the MES is way out there, that only one firm should do. And that's basically what these two lines illustrate, the average cost curve not having a bottom, in the sense that the output is so high. So then we just stick in an MR and an AR curve, and we can do a bit of analysis here. So we can basically explain that the natural monopoly should produce a Q star and P star and make this supernormal profit here. Okay, might not sound fair, but the argument could be that it's regulated, that money is used to reinvest into the production process, etc. The argument that they should do that and not be allocatively efficient, if you can remember, is allocative efficiency is where AR equals MC, which is this point here. Now we've got an issue here. We've got an issue in the sense that this, okay, will be the price that they will charge to be allocatively efficient, but the issue is the cost at that output is higher. So if a natural monopoly is asked to be allocatively efficient, it will make a loss and will mean basically the government will probably spend a lot of money subsidising and financing the loss making of the firm. So they should P max and make supernormal profits. Okay, so that's your monopolies. Quick question then. Advantages and disadvantages of monopolies. Pause the video, draw, or identify. So positives of a monopoly. So basically, I hope you remember, you've got the fact that let's start with the easy one, economies of scale. Okay, positives for the firm themselves, in the sense that they've got lower average costs from being a large firm and having high output, so increasing their scale of production in the form of lower average costs. That leads to lower average costs and may therefore be passed on to lower prices in the form of lower prices to consumers. Okay, we've also got dynamic efficiency, which is efficiency in the long run, which basically is through either product innovation or process innovation, and that is the supernormal profits being reinvested. And we have also got excuse me, we've also got the idea that if they're regulated, it will be more competitive. So we can get these sort of advantages here, and they won't be exploitative. So if they're regulated, like for example in the UK, the CMA makes sure they're not being overly exploitative to consumers, they're not charging excessively high prices, they're not colluding. So if they're regulated, they should be I suppose competitive in a sense, even though they're quite large firms. And the last one, they also face international competition, which limits their ability to charge high prices as well. So these sort of limit high prices, but ensure they're competitive, and I suppose innovating as well, to a certain extent, to stay competitive in markets. So there are your advantages. Disadvantages, negatives, we've got spew, which is disgusting, but obviously we've got the service that they provide, because they lack competition, is very poor. So that was a big issue with nationalised industries in the UK, like the railways back in the day, because they faced no competition. They were late, they were delayed, they broke down. There was no competition, didn't really matter. So the service that monopolies provide often is poor because of lack of competition. Obviously, we've got high prices, and that is obviously impacts lower incomes more, so it's regressive. It reduces things like consumer surplus. They're all key terms that you have to use when you're talking about the price of consumers, or monopolies being high and damaging consumers. Efficiencies. If you went back to the diagram, you would know that they're not allocatively efficient, or are they productively efficient? In the sense, AE, they don't produce where AR equals MC, and they're not productively efficient because they're not producing at the bottom of the AC curve. So they're not efficient firms, which has got issues in regards to the allocation of resources and how we're wasting resources, and welfare linked to, I suppose, prices, issues with consumer surplus, allocate efficiency. So you can use the welfare argument in there as well in regards to why monopolies aren't good. Now there is a random little argument that falls under both, and it is to do with price discrimination. Okay, so hopefully you remember what price discrimination is. Pause the video, jot a few things down about it, and then I'll fill in the gaps. So price discrimination is whenever a firm charges different prices to different consumers for reasons not associated with costs. Okay, so it costs them the exact same to provide the product, but they're charging different prices. 3 things required for that. So they have to be able to identify different consumers or elasticities in the market. They have to have some degree of price setting power, and they also have to stop what's called arbitrage or resale. So people can't buy, so for example, an off-peak ticket, which is cheaper than the peak ticket, and use it at the peak time. So that's the requirements. There's 4 types of price discrimination. First degree, perfect pricing, charging every consumer what it is they're willing and able to pay. So for example, auctions. You've got second degree price discrimination, which is normally to do with capacity or the number of units bought. So if you buy more, you sort of get a lower per unit price that you pay. And you've also got the idea that whenever hotels, holiday companies, airline operators, whenever they have got a lot of spare capacity coming up to their deadlines of when the service is being provided, they sometimes drop the price. So that could be another example of second degree price discrimination. And then we've also got third degree price discrimination, which looks at different elasticities within the market. So peak, off peak, adult prices and children prices, adult prices and OAP prices. So they are identifying different elasticities. And there's an argument, is what I'm trying to say here, is an advantage of price discrimination over here is that it allows individuals who wouldn't be able to afford a product initially an opportunity to join the market. And the hurdle model, as well, is a 4th type of price discrimination, which actually is a positive, I suppose, for monopolies. So if you think about iPhones, people can access an iPhone if they wait, if they buy a second-hand one, if they get it refurbished, if they get coupons or some kind of like reward scheme to buying it for cheaper. So positive of price discrimination is that some people who wouldn't be able to afford it through price discrimination can. Cross-subsidization as well is another advantage of price discrimination, in the sense that monopolies might, it's bad because obviously they dominate the market, but they're operating some services. If you think about buses at night time when they're really quiet, like how are they able to operate? They're making a loss. Well, it's because during the day at peak times they make supernormal profits, and it's called cross-subsidizing. So they cross-subsidize the profit to run the loss-making operations. So there are some advantages you could put in here for price discrimination about monopolies. Negatives, obviously, it obviously further establishes the monopoly power, so it could be seen as limit pricing. It restricts competition, and it does mean some consumers do ultimately pay a much higher price, which obviously reduces their consumer service and welfare. Anyway, that's most oligopolies. There's something else you could critique, obviously, oligopolies with as well. So all these negatives and positives ultimately depend upon, it's a big A4 point, the degree of contestability. Okay, and that is the idea that there is a possible threat of new firms entering the market. If there is a possible threat of new firms entering the market, that means there's high contestability, and monopolies will act in a more competitive manner. So actually all these, sort of maybe advantages in regards to dynamic efficiency won't materialize, because unfortunately they've had to act in a more competitive manner to restrict the competition coming in. Or all the disadvantages might not materialize because they're actually not charging high prices. So for example, they're not producing where MR equals MC, making this supernormal profit. They're not producing here because of contestability. They change to maybe a more allocatively efficient outcome. So that's where AR equals MC, or they might produce where AR equals LC here and do limit pricing, because obviously that means that they are making enough to stay in the industry, but they're not incentivizing new firms to enter the market because they're not making these excessive supernormal profits. They're making what we call normal profits, where AR equals AC, and that stops new firms from wanting to join the market. Oligopoly next then, please. So see if you can define oligopolies and tell me a little bit about them. So hopefully for an oligopoly, you've got that it is when a few large firms dominate the market. Okay, a few large firms dominate the market, and that's normally identified through what we call a concentration ratio. The concentration ratio, and a sort of benchmark is if the concentration ratio 5 is 60%. So if five of the largest firms have over 60% of the market share, that would be seen as an oligopolistic market, or around that mark anyway. That's not set in stone, but that's sort of like, you know, what you'd be looking for. That would be seen as oligopolistic. Obviously, in exams, they sometimes ask you, they'll give you like a pie chart or something like this, and it'll say what is the three firm concentration ratio. This is Tesco's, this is Other, this is Morrison's, this is Sainsbury's, this is Asda. So top three, some people will go 1, 2, 3 because it looks like they're the three largest. But if this is Other, this is made up of multiple market shares of different firms. So it'll be 1, 2, 3 that you would add up. Okay, you wouldn't add up the Other. That's a little trick they seem to ask quite often in regards to concentration ratios. Yeah, characteristics of oligopolistic markets. Obviously, you've got things such as high bars to entry, which you would obviously explain whenever you're defining it. And so high bars to entry, they got some degree of price setting power, and another big one is they all sell differentiated products. Now the big thing that oligopolistic markets we look out for in oligopolistic markets, or can tell oligopolistic markets are in existence, is through the conduct or behavior of oligopolistic markets. So see if you can remember what the two conducts of oligopolistic markets are and draw the corresponding diagrams, please. So we have got the idea of we'll do interdependence first. Interdependence. Not that it matters, my handwriting's terrible. We use what's called a kinked demand curve. So we've got two parts of the demand curve, don't forget. We've got this part, and we have got this part, an elastic part and an inelastic part, and they bend, they kink at P star, the price. Okay, and the theory is that interdependence is the action of one firm affects the action of other firms in the market and vice versa. So if this firm decides to put the price up, there will be an elastic response in the sense that demand will fall substantially as the other firms do nothing in action. Okay, they don't do anything. So if this is Tesco's, and Tesco's try to be sneaky and increase their price to make more profit, obviously they will lose out a lot because Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrison's do nothing. And that means all the consumers will go there instead, ceteris paribus, everything else stays the same. Who would go to Tesco, who are charging higher prices? So they'll lose out. Now, a common feat of oligopolistic market is this idea here. So whenever Tesco's lower the prices, we've got a very small increase because there's an inelastic response. This is AR, by the way. There's a very inelastic response to the price drop, and that's because they're not going to gain a lot of traction, a lot of consumers, because all the other firms in the market will do the same. We call this a price war, and this is a very common feature of oligopolistic markets. Good for consumers, price wars. So one firm lowers the prices, all the other firms have to react. They also have to lower the prices because if they don't, everyone will go to Tesco's. So Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, and Aldi and Lidl will do the same. So that is quite a common fate, and that explains interdependence, because the action of one firm, okay, going up or down, will affect the actions of the other firms and vice versa. We have also got what is called the discontinuous marginal revenue curve, and that is for sticky P's, sticky prices. Okay, so we've got price, cost, revenue, quantity. We start off with a kinked demand curve. Okay, so we've got P star, Q star, that's AR. Right, we have to draw an MR curve, right? So you know that an MR curve is twice as steep as an AR curve. Now we've got a bit of a strange situation here, but the most important thing to remember is this Q star line. This is what we're aiming for. So this part of the AR curve is reflected by a twice as steep MR curve, and then we get a little gap, a discontinuity. Oh, and then we've got another part that's twice as steep. So this AR is this MR twice as steep. This part of the AR is this MR twice as steep. And we've got a gap. Okay, so what we do then is if we put in a few MC curves at either end of the discontinuity. So basically, if we start off here, what we're saying is even though costs rise up to maybe MC1, the firm will not change prices. We've got sticky prices because in a way, they're always, doesn't matter what costs are, in the discontinuity, the firm is always producing where MR will equal MC. And we know that is Pmax. They can't move their price to any other place to make more profit. They're at profit maximizing level of output here. So even though we've got changes in costs, they won't change output or prices particularly because they can't make any more profit. Even though their costs are changing and obviously influencing the size of the profit they're making, they can't make more anywhere else. You can also obviously use the kink demand curve to show sticky prices, because why would you change price if you've got this uncertainty, which is the biggest thing in oligopolistic markets. If you're not sure what the other firms are going to do and how they're going to react and what your profit's going to do, you often do nothing, which is why prices are sticky. And they do then work on what's called non-price competition. Okay, and that's a common theme in oligopolistic markets. So that's things like obviously extended warranties, 24-hour openings, warranty scheme or loyalty schemes, customer service, innovation. So you have to know all the different types of non-price competition. They spend very heavily in advertising, marketing, and very heavily in research and development to try and improve the quality of their product. So that's a big factor in what we call non-inclusive oligopolies. So far this has all been non-inclusive. This is purely competitive. All this uncertainty. So they focus on non-price competition and not price. But we've also, because of all this uncertainty and all this that we've talked about so far in a non-inclusive situation, we've got collusion, which can happen and is a characteristic sometimes in oligopolistic markets. Not always, but it's sort of like firms are incentivized, if you will, because of all this uncertainty, to collude, to work with other firms, to maximize joint profits because of all this interdependence and all this sort of uncertainty within the market. So we've got two types of collusion. You've got formal collusion, which normally just takes the role of a cartel, and we've got informal collusion, which normally is done through, or sometimes called tacit collusion, and that's through price leadership. So formal collusion, firms working together in order to extrapolate consumer surplus, work together to divide up the market, control the market, create more certainty, charge higher prices, make joint profits. That's the idea of a cartel. That's illegal. So is informal, but it's harder to spot in the sense of price leadership. And the idea is that it's normally the largest firm. So we've got market leader, price leadership. So that's whenever the largest firm in the market puts the prices up. Now, a couple of things can happen. All the other firms in the market, hopefully, will put the prices up as well. So they can all obviously tacitly collude and make more joint profit. But if some firms do and some firms don't, the big firm will just be like, you know what, didn't work, put prices back down again. Obviously, if they all go up, winner, winner, chicken dinner. But if they put the prices up, and most firms follow, but one or two firms, or one firm maybe doesn't, they try and make a bit more money, stick their heels in, so to speak, and gain more customers. The biggest firm can obviously damage that firm through what's called predatory pricing, and ultimately try and kill them off and really punish them for not following the informal collusion. That's price leadership basically. Now basically big firm puts the prices up, everyone else follows, they all win. But obviously it's It's theoretical. It's hard to. It should, if they do it well, it'll obviously be very hard to spot by regulators. So that's the idea with that. Final thing: advantages and disadvantages of oligopolies. See if you can jot them down. So, advantages of oligopolies: price wars. As we know from the interdependence, whenever one firm puts the price down, the rest will follow suit. That is a big benefit. It's not good for the firms because they're making less and less revenue, but they it really benefits consumers in the sense that they're paying cheaper prices. So competition with mortgages, putting down mortgage rates. Newspapers in the past have had price wars. Budget airlines have had examples of price wars. You see it all the time. Petrol stations, they always compete to lower the prices. So price wars benefit to consumers. Obviously, as well, in the pursuit of increased market share in a obviously a non-collusive oligopoly, there's obviously more spending on research and development, innovation. So all this non-price competition as well benefits the consumers because they're ultimately hopefully going to benefit from better quality products as well. So we've got lower prices but better quality products. We've also got the fact that these are large firms, so they'll probably benefit from economies of scale. Benefits producers in the sense that they've got lower average costs. Benefits consumers in the sense that hopefully they might pass it on in the form of supernormal or in lower prices. Dynamic efficiency can be linked to the pursuit of increased market share as well and innovation. So they'd be some of your main advantages of a oligopolistic market. We've also got some negatives. Hopefully got a few of these. Obviously, with all the work done to try and gain more customers, often all the non-price competition, all the advertising money and packaging is a waste of resources through the competition. Okay, so often resources are wasted and they're not what you would say productively efficient. Another very, very specific disadvantage to oligopolies is this idea of consumer inertia. Okay, inertia in the sense that consumers stay still. Because consumers in oligopolistic markets, like they go to the same supermarket, they save in the same bank, and they get credit cards and mortgages from the same bank because they, what other examples might we have? Because they've got a mobile phone provider, they'll always stick with O2, they'll not change. So because they know the markets and because there's a lot of hassle associated with changing the business that they're currently with, it sort of leads to inertia. They stay still, they just go with the flow. Whenever they maybe could get better deals, or producers can exploit this. Insurance companies in the past have exploited this because they know people will automatically renew and they maybe don't give them the best deals or lower prices or be more competitive. So consumer inertia is an issue with oligopolistic markets. Another issue is, or similarly I suppose, is confuseology. Confuseopoly. Sometimes oligopolies are called confuseopolies. Gas and electricity market. Like if anyone, you're all probably too young, but if you ever look at a gas and electricity slip and they give you all these different tariffs and all these different rates and all these different, how much usage you have, it's literally impossible to tell a good deal from a bad deal. So you kind of you don't really know, unfortunately. Well, that's me anyway. So because of the confusion with the tariffs and with the prices that they charge, it's very hard to make the decision about which one is the best, which kind of links into why you would just stay with who provide your energy. So it links to consumer inertia. Obviously fewer choices, so choice is restricted because there's only a few large firms dominate the market and barriers to entry are quite high, so it might not be as competitive or new firms find it hard to come in and compete. And the cartels and the price leadership obviously lead to higher prices, which aren't good for consumers. And there's a lack of innovation as well associated with markets that are oligopolistic markets that are inclusive. Okay, so that is market structures for oligopolies and monopolies. I hope it was a bit of help. Please go back through it again, and thank you.